So now there was an interesting story that I came across that's not really, I don't know, here with the collision, I try not to wade too much into like, I don't know, like the more gossipy, like tabloid part of pop culture, and especially when it gets into like families or like the
Mm-hmm.
personal life of celebrities. Like I think, I don't know, my focus is usually on like the art, the stuff that they're creating. But there was an interesting thing that I don't think you had seen. I sent you the information for this. Um, that is somewhat in that world, but I think it for me it's interesting because it reflects I think some of almost a case study and I think an important reminder for Christians about I don't know just what we're sort of not what we're up against, but like just the some of the challenges of living as a Christian in a world that doesn't share our faith. So it was. I don't believe you are a regular listener to the Dear Chelsea podcast.
I'm
By
not. I don't. Are you?
I am not. The Chelsea Handler, I know she's sort of a pundit, a commentator, celebrity world. A comedian. I
Yeah.
don't know. She's just one of those people that I don't know exactly what she does as her
Uh-huh.
main thing. I just see her pop up.
Yeah.
I think she is. I think a comedian is sort of
Okay.
her main
Sick.
role. But she had an episode. She does like a weekly or daily podcast, the Dear Chelsea podcast. And there was an episode on the August 20th with actress Anna Faris,
Mm-hmm.
who is promoting her new movie, Scary Movie. I think it's like the sixth of these, which is the sixth one that I have not
Yeah,
seen
yeah.
because this is not kind of the spoofs of horror movies
Yeah.
and comedy. And I don't know, I think they tend to be pretty raunchy and stuff, and I've never gotten into them. But the part of the podcast that I thought was interesting for Christians is she started talking about sort of her kind of her personal, her home life. And for those that don't follow the celebrity relationships, like she was previously married to actor Chris Pratt
Mm-hmm.
of Guardians of the Galaxy and many other things fame. I don't remember how long they've been separated. They got divorced.
I think since 2017. So
Okay,
it's
so
been almost 10
yeah,
years.
it's been a while. Both found new partners
Mm-hmm.
and have at least he has other children. Chris Pratt
Yeah.
does.
She's a stepmom now as well.
Yeah,
So
so she
they
has,
both have. Yeah.
which is sort of what gets her into the conversation. So she starts talking about being a mom and being a stepmom and sort of just the difficulty of that, which I think is
Yeah, that's
interesting
fair.
as someone that's never
Yeah.
been a step parent. But she does share a son with Chris Pratt, a 14-year-old son, and sort of in the conversation about just sort of parenting, the, it steers unexpectedly towards like religion and just the fact that like because obviously Chris Pratt has been very vocal about his faith. Anna Faris, as she says in the podcast, is not religious, did not grow up religious, doesn't seem very open to, or maybe she is open, but she doesn't seem very I don't know, like favorable. She definitely has like objections and concerns about it. But she starts talking about her son and the challenge. And it's just interesting to me that she immediately goes to the fact like the thing that's challenging is like she says like he is religious, and like just the way she even says it, like the tone of voice is like I don't know, it presents it as a very like almost dirty like and
someone described it as like she was audibly audibly uncomfortable, I think is what they said, something like that.
yeah, like if you listen to the episode, it's not like and he is religious and we disagree. It's like he is like almost like it's like some dirty secret, like and he's religious, like like, and there's like a pause, and Chelsea's like like it's something like no,
Oh, no.
we have and to her credit, like she does, which we'll get into, but I think I don't know, like she's also complimentary of him. Like she talks about it, says he's like, I think she said he's like as solid emotionally as like a tugboat or like, like she affirms him, like his character and that he stands for what he believes. But the part that I think is interesting is that it gets into, she sort of shares that, she challenges him. Like she pushes back on him. She challenges his faith and that, she compliments him that he's mature about it and he has these conversations and, she says that he's expressed his desire that she accept Jesus as her savior, and she kind of says like I would do anything for him, even this, but it's going to take a lot of these conversations and kind of back and forth. And I don't know, for me, like this is just sort of one little glimpse into the life of people that neither of us will ever meet. So in one sense it's like not really our business, but in another sense it's on a public podcast,
Yeah.
so it's sort of everyone's business. But
And
I
it
think
has interesting implications as
yeah,
well.
I think it's interesting for Christians, and I don't know. I've been thinking it through a little bit, And there's several parts. I'm curious to see sort of what you think too, because I think we come at it from different, maybe, obviously we have different life experiences, and I'm a parent, you're not a parent, so maybe there's different connotations. But I don't know. The one thing, my initial thought was, or two things. One, I think it's important to, because I've seen some conversations already online about this, and like, I don't know. I think with all stories like this, it's important to not fall into like a team sport mentality. Like,
Yeah.
Because I know you've seen
Team Edward and Team Jake.
yeah, unless it's that, and then you can definitely choose Team Neither. They were both creeps.
Yes.
But I don't know. I think not even just because of this conversation, although I think some of that, I do feel for her a bit, like Anna, because I think like Chris Pratt is sort of he seems like an all around good guy for one. He's very vocal about his faith and that he's a Christian. He sort of gets claimed, even though he hasn't necessarily come out strong about it, like as like this champion for like he's a conservative in Hollywood, which maybe he's not a conservative.
Yeah, we don't know.
He hasn't necessarily, and maybe I just haven't come across a whole lot of him saying that. I think people just draw the line because he's a Christian and some of those things. So because of that, because he's sort of like our hero, and he had a falling out with Anna Faris and their marriage fell apart. There has been a tendency, I think, and I don't know if you've seen some of that, like
I haven't.
of like, well, if he's the hero, then she's the villain.
Yeah.
So like she's wrong, she's bad, he's good, and I don't know. That for me, that's just not healthy. Like I think any broken marriage, and obviously we don't know any of the details, but like it's just it's a bad thing. Regardless, everyone sort of loses in that situation, and I think it's important, like when thinking about things like this and her comments with her son, like, to not go in colored with like, oh, she's a bad person because she's not Chris Pratt, therefore everything she's doing is bad and we got to push back. Like, so I think that is important to push back about some of what she said. The other thing that immediately stood out, and I think this is just because I grew up as like my dad was like a pastor for a bit, like he's a public speaker, like so I think because of that I'm colored to just I'm always, I don't know, I find it icky and just sort of a no. I just don't like when people with public platforms bring in their family. Like I know, like
especially if it's not necessarily like positive either.
Yeah, like if it's it's one thing if it's just like, hey, and I have awesome kids and
I love my partner, my
here,
spouse.
like the grandparent thing. Here's my picture of my kid. So I'm probably, and she does do something. She definitely like glazes him a bit.
It's it's like a two-sided thing.
Yeah, but there is sort of this like, I don't know, like she's pulling a 14-year-old kid into the public eye. She's on a public platform. She's a public celebrity, and she's sort of challenging him. And like the implication is that she finds like his core belief somewhat off-putting and like wrong and wayward, and she even like, I don't know, she kind of puts words in his mouth, which maybe he said, maybe he didn't say it just like that. I guess in her interpretation. So I don't know. I think, and because she sort of talks about and he's finally coming around, and I don't know. I feel like as if I was the kid, like maybe he's like, oh yeah, that's what it is. Like I'm confident. Like I just know I wouldn't feel comfortable with that.
It sounds like she's not really trying to have a conversation with him. It just sounds like she is actually trying to convince him otherwise. Like by saying, because the two things that she brought up wasn't even about like Jesus or anything either. It was about abortion, and it was about mega churches
pastors.
mega church pastors. Yeah, and just the way that she was like, and so he's finally coming around, like, because he said something like those guys are the worst. So it just seems like she's trying to turn him away from it instead of like actually digging deep and trying to figure out what his beliefs are, which she could be, but
it's interesting because it's like, on the one hand, it's like I commend the openness to have those conversations. It seems like she's expressing, her willingness to listen and to have those back and forths. And on the other hand, it seems like I don't know if how sincerely open she is. Like only she, I guess, kind of knows that, which is sort of one of my other thoughts for this. Like I think I've seen some pushback to like, sort of like, how dare she? Like how dare she challenge the faith of her son? And like, I don't know. And I think you see this. I don't know. And maybe this just hits a nerve for me because I think a lot of the cultural stuff, there can be a lot of double standards for like. It's even like we had a conversation a while ago about like, or I shared about like the lady on the airplane getting kicked off, and it's like, how dare they kick her off But if she was not a Christian, then we would be like, how dare she speak? Like there sort of is this like, yeah, but what we have is true. So like we should, and that's sort of what I think for this. Like, I think we can get into what she said, like the content of some of her challenging to her son. But like, I think the fact that she's having those conversations is actually like valid and
really
a good
healthy.
thing. Like I do that with my kids. Like they have been baptized. I'm not challenging their faith necessarily. Like we're not on different ends of that conversation, but I challenge them on beliefs and we have meaningful conversations. And like, I think that's healthy. Like I think if the tables were turned and like he was like, a skeptical son and she was the Christian and she was like challenging his, his secular beliefs, like I think a lot of Christians would be like, yeah, like parents should, help their kids understand, they should take them to Sunday school, and kind of not force their beliefs, but because they know it's true. They think that's true. Like, so I think like, as a Christian, I don't know. I just don't think we can do it both ways. Like, I think she doesn't believe, and it seems like she clearly loves and cares for her son.
Yeah.
So I don't have any issue with her having like challenging his faith. Like, and I think Christians should have their faith challenged. Like,
yeah,
I think
definitely.
Like he's not gonna. It's not like she's the only person that's ever gonna challenge his faith. Like as he gets more, especially being
in the public,
like in the public, like having famous parents, especially someone like his dad who's known for sort of the faith. Like some of that's just gonna be swirl around him fairly or not for a while. So I don't have an issue with that. Like I think that is good. But what I think it does show is just like the importance of the church actually equipping young people to have these conversations. Like I think the sort of the connotation, like I was thinking of like 1 Peter 3:15, like the be prepared to give an answer to anyone who asks for the hope that you have, like, but do it with gentleness and respect, which we sometimes don't forget that part. But like, like as Christians, we should be prepared when questions come based on our life. Like her son, has these questions. And I think this is more, I don't know, to me, this feels more like true to life than like I think this verse and that idea of training up young Christians to defend their faith, like apologetics, and I feel like a lot of our minds go to like God's not dead. Like it's okay. They go to university and then they they got to defend. It's just sort of these intellectual and like it's like I think there is some of that. Like I know my first year of college I went to a secular university and like it's like a history class and like every application of the history was like why the Bible was wrong, and it wasn't even like related to what we were talking about. It was like the guy knew the Bible better than I did at the time, probably still better than I do. So it's like it sort of was the God's not dead. Like so like that happens.
Did you say why how could you not believe it?
I pulled up my like Josh McDowell manual and I was doing my apologetics and C.S. Lewis actually counted that with but he sort of saw some and I think I was the only Christian in my whole class, so like and I sort of just took it and didn't maybe I wasn't courageous enough, but like I think so that still happens. But I think like these sort of I don't know, these sort of encounters are more true to the experience of most people. Like it's not okay, well it's some person out there, some professor or celebrity or whatever it may be. I think it's being able to defend, even the word defend I don't like, even though I know that's sort of a biblical, like being able to like answer and converse about your faith and give reasons for the hope, I think happens within these sort of more intimate conversations. And I think it makes it harder. Like in some ways it's like, I don't care what, like for me, I don't care what this professor thinks other than that if he fails me, I got to retake the class. But like, like I don't have like an emotional attachment, but I do to my mom, and like obviously for me, my mom is a Christian and doesn't challenge my faith, but like, those are way more difficult. And like, even I've just seen a lot more of like, I don't know, it's harder to sort of stand against those sort of things when there's more of an investment and like a love shared than it is just to like the world, stand up.
Well, and that's how they're going to see your life and how you live with the Holy Spirit informing how like your walk every day too. Like that there's I think higher of a chance of having those conversations with people that you know well and who know you well. And so I think it's more valuable to try and build those conversations and instead of like just standing on which is also valuable, but it seems to be more impactful to have those personal relationships and personal discussions than just standing on the street corner and, well, I was going to say yelling at people, but we don't like that. But standing on the street corner and just preaching that way as well.
Yeah, and I think it's just a reminder, too, for me, that's kind of my main takeaway, is this, like, it's not neutral. Like, this idea that, like, because you hear that people criticize Christians for that, of, like, hey, just let your kid believe, like, what they believe, like, don't force your beliefs on them. And it's like, well, like, every parent forces their belief on their kid. Like, if you're not a Christian, like, you're, by the things you do, by not taking them to church, by, the things you have in your house, the things you talk about, like, that is the same. Like, it's not, no one comes from, like, a purely neutral, like, my own beliefs, were developed in a vacuum. And not, like, everyone has stuff from their parents, either that they accept or they reject, or their friends or their community. Like, so, like, I don't know. I think as Christians, we just need to remember, like, every conversation we do have, or, as we're reaching people, like, they're all coming from somewhere, and they're all influenced by something. And maybe the last, I don't know, like, I think and it's hard to, because I'm not throwing him under the bus, like the son, and he doesn't get a voice other than what she says, as she sort of quotes him. And the way she frames it is that I don't know, it seems like he stands for him for what he believes, but he doesn't necessarily, she doesn't give any examples of things he says that challenge her. If that makes, she says things that she says that challenge him, nothing that he has sort of said that makes her go like, oh, well, I guess that's a good point. I haven't considered that. Like, because the two things, like you mentioned, like that she talks about, asking, like, do you think it's like a luxury to be pro-life? And then she talks about, like, what about these, like, grifting mega pastors? And for both of those, like, she says for the pro-life that he's like, well, maybe, sort of concedes a bit. And then the grifting, he's like, yeah, they are the worst.
Yeah.
They are bad. And then she sort of takes that to be like, I'm making progress.
Yeah.
And it's sort of the way I took it. Like, and maybe that's putting words in her mouth. Like, maybe she doesn't mean that way.
That's what it seems like.
But I think she even says, like, he seems like he's coming around, which, again, is not necessarily not valid. If she doesn't believe it, she's challenging him, and he seems to be conceding a bit, then that's probably how she should feel. But I just think, like, for me, the frustrating part is this, like, neither of those are, I don't think, super challenging thing. Like, like, a luxury to be pro-life, like, no. Like, I think obviously so much of that is a bigger conversation, but it depends on just whether you have common ground of what a life is. But I think, from my view, it's like, well, I think it's a luxury to end a life for our personal convenience. Like, I don't think it's a luxury to, and my assumption is because he's a guy and she's a girl, like she's saying, isn't it a luxury for you because you're not the one that has to carry it? And again, there's so much more to that's not really, it's an important conversation, but it's not like a, TKO, score one for the, and then, like, the mega church pastor stuff, it's like, yeah, like, they are the worst. And, like, and maybe they had more of a conversation for that.
Ground,
but it's like, but the gospel is, like, doesn't depend on, like, if a worldview being true depended on whether or not there are grifters in that worldview, then, like, nothing would be true, because there are grifters in Hollywood. There's atheist grifters. There's Christian grifters. Like, there's every industry. There's
just look to the
people
left,
are grifters.
Look to the right.
Yeah, like, there's always going to be people that abuse that worldview system, that belief, and sort of like, hey, I can use this religion, I can use this secular humanistic belief, like, to gain, like, so, like, that doesn't disqualify. It may disqualify people. Yeah. It may disqualify this church.
Which
this
is kind
segment
of the point of the gospel in a way.
Yeah, like, but it's like, yeah, like, that's not the, that's not a comment on the truth of the gospel. That's a comment on, is this individual abusing the gospel? And the fact that they can agree, in my mind, actually affirms the gospel more than it does not affirm it. So, I don't know. Like, I think there are answers to a lot of these, or to all of these questions. And it seems like he's the son, like, is grounded enough to have those conversations, even if it seems like her takeaway is that he maybe doesn't have specific answers. But I don't know. That's just sort of as someone that's, again, I'm raising young kids, and so these sort of stories maybe stick out to me more than they would for you, who is not yet raising.
I'm just not on the internet as chronically as you are.
Yeah,
I think.
maybe that's the takeaway.
That's my takeaway.
but I don't know. I just think it's a reminder as the church, like these things are going on, like, and this is
Mm-hmm.
sort of what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because of that, as the church, like we can sort of, I don't know, equip our young people to actually answer the questions in the situations that they're actually facing, and maybe not just the ones that we think we are. Like essentially, just don't be naive. People are challenging the faith. People are challenging the faith of young people, and like as the church, what are we doing to prepare them for that?